If I told you Lifeweaver could work in the big 2025, would you believe me?
They hate me.
Jaehong is threatening to let 1,000 blossoms bloom right now. God, I wish Ru Jaehong would suck me to safety sometimes, but anyhow.
Look at any tier list and Lifeweaver will always be at the bottom. And while I know Overbuff isn't insanely accurate, there is data to show Lifeweaver's abysmal pick and win rates. So how come an underdog team in Korea, or Goshen, beat one of the biggest titans in the region playing this seemingly awful hero? Let's find out. First, we need to talk about the strengths and weaknesses of this hero and why something like Brig or even Juno isn't being played. The first reason is actually his verticality, which links into the maps and the bans. Juno and Brig have fairly little vertical mobility, which becomes an issue on the first point of Zuravasa, where accessing the two high grounds can be make or break. Obviously, Weaver can easily access that high ground with his petal. Considering Tracer is one of the most meta DPS heroes at the moment, one of her biggest weaknesses is that she has no verticality. This smart adaptation to the map helps to minimize one of Weaver's biggest weaknesses, being that he's a terrible duelist against most flankers. You never have to worry about dueling Tracer if she can never reach you in the first place. This leads me onto the bans, with Old Ocean choosing to ban Sombra. We've seen Sombra Tracer being played before, which forced support players to play FNAF, but Sombra can be problematic for Weaver. It's hard to get rid of Sombra if she's already on top of you compared to Brig, and Tree is a pretty bad ultimate compared to EMP. Still though, stick around and you'll see some very creative trees. So far, just by the map and the ban, we've seen how Weaver's weaknesses have been minimized to play up to his unique strengths. Once Ru Jaehong is on the high ground, we see Probe just win the first fight by hard diffing Flora, but soon after, we see another vital piece of Weaver utility. Once both hazards are brawling each other and Gurm seems to be in a bit of trouble, Ru Jaehong grips him to safety. Conversely, Bernard is stuck on low HP, soon dying alongside his Kiriko. Now, in fairness, Finn did just toss his Suzu directly at a wall, but we're only getting started with Weaver's utility. Flora seemingly gets his revenge onto Probe by landing that 2-shot combo, but thanks to Lifeweaver, that's no longer an issue. On release, Life Grip was widely criticised as a meme and not taken seriously, but in this situation, Life Grip is the only support ability that could reliably save Probe here. Sorry Kiriko players, but you're not hitting a Suzu onto a dashing target mid-air. Not to mention, Weaver can consistently live through the Freya 2-shot combo. If you've watched my Freya video, you'll know just how deadly her 1-2 punch is regarding her bolts. But because Weaver has that high HP pool and a dash that gives him 40 HP, he can just tank that shit. And actually, there was a moment in the game where Weaver's bulkiness was that difference between life and death. Honestly, I think it's a super unique strength to play Weaver that more people need to talk about. Back to the first point, and now armed with Tree of Life, we see Ru Jaehong use it to match the Kitsune Rush. However, notice how it's also artificial cover to use on points. Suravasa first is actually pretty open and lacks any cover for the players to use on points. Going a step further, Ru Jaehong actually ends up catching Alpha E on Lucio, and while he sadly goes down, it doesn't matter, the fight's already won and the point's been capped. In general, Tree was being used to counteract ultimates like Blade, Kitsune Rush, or Freya's Bowler Shots. It just helps Weaver and his team to absorb dive pressure and burst damage. Before I continue, if you've learned something new, check out my coaching on Metafy alongside the supported tiers too. Now, Ru Jaehong does have some struggles on Weaver when it comes to the second point. Most notably, Bernard swaps to the Diva and Pelican goes to the Genji. Diva's got a stronger and further reach compared to Hazard, meanwhile Genji doesn't suffer from the same verticality issues as Tracer. Having no Lucio comes at a cost too, and Zeta Division are able to quickly burst down the Kiriko despite the Kitsune, as well as committing beat to continue their dive. The spikes from Gurm go wide, and even though Jaehong saves his Freya yet again, it's too little too late. On the retake, we now get to see the 2-2-1 setup the Weaver team has. The Tracer Kiri plays to the left, the Weaver Freya play down main, and the Hazard is alone to the right. You might wonder why Freya is playing so close to the Weaver, but it's likely to maximize his distance against the Lucio Genji dive, alongside keeping LOS for life grip. However, the formation starts to break as Kivis is forced to TP away, and the Diva Genji Lucio are able to close that distance onto the Freya Weaver. You can use your imagination for what happens afterwards. Despite this point being a wash, the Weaver still hasn't been swapped out yet. Instead, Kivis goes to Brig, creating a pretty underrated Brig-Weaver duo for a few reasons. Firstly, Brig covers Weaver's weakness when it comes to fighting off flankers. She's got a notoriously good matchup into D.Va, and she directly threatens heroes like Genji. Secondly, Weaver basically has a permanent Harmony Orb. In case you didn't know, Weaver's minor perk can give him a passive 10 healing per second, and Inspire does 15 healing per second. Do some simple math, and that's close to Harmony Orb. You might not think that this is meaningful, but during a rally engage, Jaehyung gets to as low as 8 HP. If he didn't have that passive healing, he likely dies. Speaking of that rally engage, that only compounds the AoE healing even more and allows the Weaver to get involved. It's honestly giving me PTSD flashbacks of the Brig Bap double shield comp, which in part was broken due to the AoE healing. Speaking of perks, Jaehyung picks Super Bloom, basically giving him an extra burst of thorns. It's nothing major, but it's fairly easy to land that extra damage when playing into tanks like Hazard or Orisa. Moving on to the last point, one thing the Weaver comp is built for is baiting. In this fight, Probe again just finds a magical pick onto Flora, allowing Gurm to push further. The impressive part though comes after. Alfie beats back in response to the bowler shot, but it does look like Old Ocean are in big trouble. Gurm's fairly low, and the Brig is close enough to be rushed on. Pelican even pops the blade too, but a clutch script from Jaehyung saves Gurm, and a Tree of Life helps Kivis stave off the Genji. He even gives a platform for Kivis to use, but funnily enough, it actually fucks up Pelican's blade instead. Speaking of clutch platforms, straight after, Jaehyung platforms up the Orisa during her Terror Surge, just like that gameplay trailer. He unfortunately still dies to Flora's bowler shots, but to be honest, judging by the ultimates, this was always going to be a hard fight to win. The tree also comes in clutch too, because it helps Gurm get back to full HP, allowing him to one-shot Pelican, opening up the last fights. It's kinda like the tree creates a small dominoes effect, and couple in the spike kill onto Flora, and it's not looking good for Zeta Division. From that point onwards, it's just cleanup, and I think the team celebration, as well as Unter and Commander X's commentary, speaks volumes.
That's gonna be an easy one. Lifeweaver!
Smoked him! Absolutely smoked him!
Naturally, after getting to this point in the video, you might wonder why we don't see any more Weaver. Well, just a few hours after the insane Lifeweaver upset, a European team tried their hand at Weaver with limited success, which can maybe tell us a thing or two. The first key fight is when Sky uses Life Grip on his Sigma, but then, seconds afterwards, his Zen just explodes. Now, part of this is probably on the Zen swinging so wide and getting booped for no reason, but there's more. In this fight, rallies popped, and Sky once again has to grip out his Sigma. But the D.Va just blows up the Weaver's backline in the meantime and can't fight off the D.Va. Basically, what teams are doing is forcing out Life Grip by applying a ton of frontline pressure on the enemy tank. Then, they close the distance with Hyper Ring and or D.Va boosters, allowing them to reach that squishy Weaver backline. Now, there is counterplay to this. The Brig we saw on Suravasa helps Weaver fight off the D.Va and hold ground even when Grip's been used, but unfortunately, Twilight does not play Brig. Shout out my goat Christopher for signing 2 flex supports. But what do you do if you don't want to play Brig? How do you win this fight? Well, the first way is kinda cheating, but your Echo duplicates the Brig, allowing you to clear that D.Va and rally afterwards. The second one is more complicated. Usually, whenever you're playing poke comps into brawler comps, you want to have both your support splits. This is because the D.Va, at worst, can only fly onto one of the 2 supports. Instead, what ends up happening is that the D.Vas are able to sit on the entire backline. Here, if D.Va flies onto the Zen, he gets gripped, Echo duplicates, and you play to punish the enemy backline with 6 spam and your bowler shots. Do keep in mind this comp is straight cheeks, so I had to get creative. Anyways, check out this video here on screen if you enjoyed, and check out my coaching too. Until next time.